Hello and welcome to the Sunday Recap Podcast. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11, talking about a recap of all the Sunday action. And if you were someone that paid up, more often than not, you were disappointed. But we'll get to that here in a minute. Starting off first with the Bucks and the Colts, and a guy that you were high on, T.Y. Hilton. 6 for 95, 2 touchdowns on 12 targets. Dante Moncrief had another nice line as well, 8 for 114. This is a Bucks team that everybody was kind of recency bias high on after last week. Started off well, and then they just completely died and were terrible for a good majority of this game.
Yeah, and then if you had Doug Martin, he got into the end zone, but then it was called back with a holding call. So he consistently just can't find the end zone regardless of what it is, whether it's play calling, penalties, whatever, but still had a nice game, 97 yards. He continues to just, yards per carry wise, I mean, he's been solid. He's over 5 on the season. I think he might even be higher than Gurley after this week, which is kind of crazy to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. But all in all, 25-12 game. Not a whole lot of fantasy excitement in this one. Raiders and Titans next up. Saw 6 passing touchdowns in this one. Amari Cooper had a couple ridiculous catches. I saw one highlight. They cut to it on Red Zone. They said, "Look what Derek Carr just did," and it was an underthrown ball that Cooper came back and made a great grab on. So technically, Carr gets some credit for that as well. But Cooper just looked like a monster once again. But Seth Roberts, for all of you that paid up for Seth Roberts, which hopefully hopefully one of you had him. I didn't have him, and I don't know why you would have. But Seth Roberts, 6 for 113 and 2 touchdowns. And, that's the second time he's had a big game this year. And I just wonder how many people are going to see this next week and say, oh, my God, look at Seth Roberts. Let me play some Seth Roberts real quick.
Yeah, especially, Crabtree hit a down week. Cooper there, he's still not the guy you want to target. And even, they got a couple tight ends that get mixed in because Carr spreads the ball around. He hit 10 different wide receivers. And I love Murray. Saw 22 carries this week, although he wasn't productive. I think Tennessee's a decent run defense, but that's pretty encouraging because we've been kind of asking each week for Murray to get 20-plus carries, and he finally does.
Yeah, and then on the other side, we saw Marcus Mariota had 3 touchdowns. But the guy that I had, Delaney Walker, a lot of other people had, was not one of the people to get in the end zone. So that's always a frustrating thing when you got the top target and everyone else gets all the touchdowns.
Yeah, Walker didn't have a bad game, but I know we needed those points, so that touchdown would have been nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And then over here, Bills and Chiefs, we saw over here a lot of people tweeting about the weather. People saying, well, I'm playing the Chiefs defense now because Tyrod Taylor's not healthy, or the vice versa because the Chiefs offense isn't very good. And all we saw here was just a ton of offense. Sammy Watkins first half, maybe the best first half we've seen of any wide receiver all season long. Just looked absolutely unstoppable. And Taylor's finally realizing, here's what you do. You throw the ball to Sammy Watkins and you let him go to work. It worked at Clemson, so I don't know why it wouldn't work now. And every time they've done it, it's worked. So as someone who had no Sammy Watkins shares this week, that's unfortunate for me. But, moving forward, it's obvious that this is who they're getting the ball to. And, LaShawn McCoy got off to a good start, had an okay game. But, there's just a whole lot of guys that went off in this game.
Yeah, this was surprising. Over 800 yards of offense combined. And, I was looking at the Chiefs' schedule the rest of the way and how good they've been the last, 2 or 3 weeks offensively. They have a nice favorable matchup the rest of the way, and they could be some cash game plays. You're looking at Jeremy Maclin, who ran wild today, which was surprising against this Bills secondary, who's pretty solid, and Travis Kelce as well. Spencer Ware, I loved him this week for his price, but I didn't think the matchup was great. He really surprised me. I just think, this is a Chiefs team that has playmakers, but they don't always get used to their potential. So this was nice to see.
Yeah, and if we're talking about running back systems, all of a sudden we've seen 3 different guys have huge games now for this Chiefs team. Obviously Jamal Charles, but he's a freak of nature. Then you've got Charkandrick West was playing well. Obviously he didn't play this week. Then Spencer Ware stepped right in, and he had himself a really nice game. And I was not a big fan of his this week in cash games just because it was a really tough matchup against the Bills. But this guy, watching him, this kid ran so hard. He looks really good.
Yeah, I'll definitely. West will probably likely be back next week because he was close this week, but he might, step up and get some more shares going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And then next up, Giants and Redskins. Everyone was looking at Julio and Odell Beckham and DeAndre Hopkins, and maybe you couldn't decide. I'll be honest with you and tell you I couldn't decide, and the odd man out was Odell Beckham, so you know how the end of my week went. But Odell Beckham, that touchdown catch, oh my God. I mean, you see it, and I was watching that game, you see the pass, and you think, well, nice try. You threw it where only your guy can get it. And then Odell Beckham went and got it, and it's unbelievable catch. I mean, this guy just continues to make Eli Manning look like a serviceable quarterback because, let's be honest, Eli Manning had a horrible game. Awful game. But Odell Beckham just continues to make him look much better than he is.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years from now, we're going to be watching just a highlight reel on NFL Network of Beckham Jr. just catching, just him, nothing going on, no talking, just him catching footballs, like highlight reel stuff. I mean, the guy's unbelievable. And like you said, Manning, awful, terrible game. We were lucky because Kirk Cousins was able to put up some points, so we saw a lot of garbage time. And then, of course, Odell Beckham, 18 targets. He was force-fed the rest of the way, so that was nice if you had him.
Yeah, absolutely. And then speaking of the next game where everyone had Brian Hoyer and everyone had DeAndre Hopkins, and before you guys start insulting my favorite quarterback, Brian Hoyer, he played a good game, but once the Saints just had no chance of scoring. I mean, they just couldn't move the ball. When they did move the ball, they turned it over or got stopped on downs. It was an ugly performance by the Saints offense. Probably more so a great performance by the Texans defense again. I mean, they just all of a sudden looked like one of the better units in all of football with J.J. Watt playing at a crazy high level. But this wasn't Brian Hoyer's fault, guys. He won the game. He got 2 touchdowns early and didn't need to do anything else again. So, go ahead and jump off the Hoyer and Hopkins bandwagon. I'm going to stay on, and I'm going to enjoy it moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, Hoyer, there's still a high-volume passing attack. The one time the Saints don't feel like airing it out and throwing the ball and actually putting up some points, it happened to be this week. We usually can count on them to keep things close, even though they're not a good team. I loved Mark Ingram this week, and he had a great game. I mean, per his touches, because he finished with 6 catches for 45 yards, 52 yards on just 9 carries. I don't know why they don't just let him. I mean, the game wasn't out of hand. I mean, they still could have rushed with Ingram there. So I still don't get this offense. I really don't.
Yeah, no. And I mean, like you said, Alfred Blue, I mean, it was Alfred Blue. If you played him as contrarian, he got the touchdown that Hopkins deserved. And we saw stats originally with the Cecil Shorts shuffle pass. They give DeAndre Hopkins the touchdown. Twitter explodes with the double duo that most people had in cash games, and ended up being Cecil Shorts. People that didn't have Brian Hoyer all said it wasn't a pass. It was a pretty fun situation for everyone, except for everyone who invested heavily in DeAndre Hopkins, and I'm raising my hand there.
Yep, me too.
Yeah, and I mean, we're certainly not alone there. There was plenty of people who had that as well. Vikings and Falcons, another frustrating game. If you played what seemed like an obvious play in Julio Jones, figured he'd get a ton of targets, and obviously Vikings game plan kind of try to take away Julio Jones, but we've seen many teams try to have this game plan before, and it hasn't worked because Julio Jones is just a phenomenal athlete. But at the same time, we see Atlanta once again just be god-awful on offense. Devonta Freeman sat out. Tevin Coleman looked good, but this is not a good team. I mean, just flat out, they're not a good team. They started off the season hot. Everyone said, wow, look at Atlanta. They're unstoppable. And, I mean, they've been so bad on offense. Actually, their defense to me recently seems better than their offense, which is crazy considering the weapons they have, because Matt Ryan, I mean, his decision-making, we'll get to somebody 2 games from now who made worse decisions, but Matt Ryan was one of the worst of the week.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I mean, he's been bad the last couple of weeks, and it's kind of, I mean, you haven't really seen it up until this week where Julio Jones is really affected by it, but this week he definitely was. And I know Coleman had a solid game, but I mean, still, Julio Jones, I mean, he was getting targets around Jacob Tamme numbers, Roddy White numbers, so that was pretty disappointing. And I didn't think Adrian Peterson was going to go off for 150-plus and 2 yards. I thought maybe the Falcons would jump out ahead a little bit, cause Bridgewater to throw, because I still think he's kind of that game flow running back, but he's been great. I mean, 5 touchdowns in the last 4 games there, so he's been solid.
Yeah, and then move on to the next game. As a Bengals fan, I could have told you what was going to happen in this one. Rams offense is bad. You try to stop Todd Gurley, and they did slow down Todd Gurley, and you try to make Nick Foles throw the football, and it seemed like every time he threw the football, some Bengal defender had a chance at picking it off. Picks it off 3 times, like you mentioned here. One of them run back for a touchdown, and really it was AJ Green being it seems like every week it's someone stepping up, having a big game. This week it was AJ Green. They had no answer for him. Not like you really expected the Rams would. And Tyler Eifert scored another touchdown, continues to lead the league, and try to take over that top spot from Gronk. And I'm not going to predict that he's going to get Gronk's record, but he's not going to be too far off by the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, that's impressive. This is the first time we actually seen Green and Eifert score a touchdown in the same game. It's always one or the other. Jeremy Hill, 16 carries, 86 yards. This is the first week where he's really the kind of look productive, running the ball, not just getting goal line carries and touchdowns there. Going to see the Browns next week, so if he's still healthy. I know he knocked out with an injury late in the game, but seemed to be fine. So I think he could be a sneaky cheap play next week.
Yeah, I mean, Bengals facing the Browns next week, so Hill, Gio, take your pick. If for some reason Hill sits out, I mean, Gio is going to be a guy that I'm locking into almost all of my lineups there. Chargers and Jags. We all thought the Jags would have their way this week, and their way was the true Jacksonville Jaguars way, and that was terrible, terrible play calling. I mean, we're talking some of the worst we've seen all season, and then just allowing the other team to just score at will. I mean, Antonio Gates said before the game he wasn't sure if he was hurting or helping the team. He scored 2 touchdowns. That tells you how well the Jags played in this one. We see TJ Yeldon get off to a fast start. You and I were some of the people on the bandwagon, not because Yeldon's been great, but because it was a great matchup. And then you get in the red zone, and not only did they stop running the ball, but twice in the same game, Blake Bortles blatantly runs. I mean, we're talking 5 to 8 feet past the line of scrimmage and throws the ball. I mean, I don't know if this guy was drunk. I don't know what he was doing, but I mean, that was embarrassing for Blake Bortles.
Yeah, no, he was definitely drunk. I mean, he needs to sober up for next week because that was clearly the case. I mean, the only garbage time points he had this game, and Julius Thomas, this was his first big game coming to Jacksonville. He had a nice 9 receptions, 116 yards, and a touchdown. If Hearns is out, you got to look at Robinson and Thomas being, great plays next week again. And I mean, they're always a high volume passing attack, but in this matchup, you got to get Yeldon the ball.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing with Bortles. He's a great fantasy quarterback. The guy I wouldn't want anywhere near my real team. He's very inefficient, makes bad decisions. But, I mean, end of the day, he ended up as one of the higher scorers on the week still. So, one way or another, he got his. Speaking of one way or another getting theirs is Ryan Fitzpatrick, 4 touchdowns, 277 yards. Miami, everyone thought they were terrible. Joe Philbin goes away. Bring in the new coach. They played great for a couple weeks, and now we just realize that they're just terrible. I mean, this is just a bad team, and the Jets just put it on them.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Jets. The Jets had everything kind of lined up for them this week. Great matchup. I just wasn't playing them. I just wanted to pay up. I wanted Hopkins. I wanted Odell there. But Brandon Marshall had a great matchup. Decker had a great matchup, and they were the ones who really paid off. And even Ivory, back to his 20-plus carries, had 87 yards in the score. So that was good to see. I mean, Jarvis Landry just seems like the safest option if you want to take a shot at a Miami guy because blowout or not, he gets his looks and he catches a ton of points, especially on DK there with the full PPR.
Yeah, and then with Rashard Matthews hurt, you still mentioned Devontae Parker, 4 for 80 and a touchdown. Obviously, GPP option, not a guy you can necessarily rely on, but if Rashard Matthews continues to be out, then we could see him as a good option. I mean, the guy was one of the better, if not the best receiver in college over the last couple of years, so definitely some big upside. Cardinals and 49ers, if you invested heavily in the Cardinals, raising my hand once again against this terrible Niners defense, then you were very, very disappointed. And I mean, this was a game they were fortunate to even win. And Fitzgerald, 14 targets, 10 catches. You figure, hey, Fitzgerald had a great game. No, 10 for 66. I mean, you'll take that on DraftKings with the full PPR, but if you paid up for him, I mean, it wasn't quite a Julio Jones paying up. He was mid-7Ks, but you pay for him on FanDuel and you get right around 10 points, and you're not happy at the end of the day. Yeah,
I mean, last week it was chalk, running backs going down. This week it was chalk wide receivers, although Odell Beckham had a nice game. But other than that, Fitzgerald, we were in play. Hopkins was in play. Jones, I mean, none of them really paid off this week. It was another frustrating week.
Yep. Yeah, it seems like things going down in flames every other week here. So next up, a game that none of us really had pinned as a big upside. 69-point type of game, but Steelers and Seahawks, and I'm thrilled the Seahawks pulled this one out. I didn't have any Russell Wilson, but I am a Steelers hater. And Martavis Bryant, though, guy that you were on, 5 for 69, but an 11-yard touchdown run. Marcus Wheaton, 201 yards. I mean, if you had Marcus Wheaton this week, then good for you. That was a hell of a call. I didn't, but Antonio Brown, it was almost like the Seattle said, okay, we're going to take away your top options. So the Steelers said, okay, well, we have more. And then they used these. And the biggest story is the fact that I don't know if you realized, but I didn't realize it was Russell Wilson's birthday till after the game had already started. Otherwise, I mean, why wouldn't I have played Russell Wilson on every one of my lineups?
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves a good narrative, and obviously Doug Baldwin had something going on because he was on the end of 3 of those touchdowns, and, Jermaine Kearse as well. Jimmy Graham, brutal injury, he's going to be done for a while, and I guess, they don't have a lot of options, but Baldwin's kind of, could you feel a little bit more comfortable with him going forward?
You kind of have to. They got no other options, and Baldwin's always kind of been the favorite there, really, for Russell Wilson, and favorite is relative in that offense because it's still supposedly a run-first attack, but, in this game, they punished that Steelers secondary, and not a big Pete Carroll fan, but that was the way to do it in this one. You attack the weakness, and that's certainly the Steelers' weakness, and they took advantage of it with, I don't want to say subpar, I don't mean that in an insulting way, but these aren't elite receivers. They're good receivers, and that's it. And Russell Wilson made it happen. So happy birthday to him. Hell of a game for him and all the people that are going to win all the money for having him on their DFS teams last night as well.
Yeah, if you had Wilson, you are probably sitting pretty right now.
Yeah, you look at the top of most leaderboards, and you're seeing Mr. Wilson up top there in the first spot, and just about all of them. Patriots and Broncos here, and I'm thrilled to see the Patriots lose the game. I'll be the first one to tell you I'm not a Patriots fan. I don't feel bad for them when they lose, and obviously I'm not going to be the one to cheer for injuries. I love Rob Gronkowski, but it seems like it's not a serious injury, which is good for them, good for DFS as well, especially with all the other injuries they've already got. They're saying maybe 1 week, maybe none. Seems to me that if the Patriots are somewhat worried about it, they're the type of team that'll say game time decision, then rest him for a week, let Scott Chandler take over, which will make him an awesome value, at least on FanDuel. On DraftKings, not on FanDuel. FanDuel price not great for him. But Broncos, Brock Osweiler doing what Peyton Manning has struggled to do, and that's beat the Patriots. And huge win for the Broncos. That battle up top in the AFC now is pretty close. You got Patriots, Bengals, Broncos all within a game. Broncos now with the advantage over the Patriots. So if they end up tying them, this was a game that might have cost the Patriots home field advantage.
Yeah, that's huge, and it was a good game to watch, especially just because Denver was trailing for most of it, so it was kind of impressive to see Osweiler coming from behind. They continued to run the ball. Anderson with that 48-yard game winner, that was fun to watch out there in the snow, so I was happy. I wasn't happy to see Gronk go down, but it seems like he's going to be okay, so I'm happy about that. But I was happy as well to see New England take an L.
And, some of my season-long teams, you see 13 targets for Demaryius Thomas, who obviously I'm playing in any matchup in season long. 1 catch on 13 targets, so at least you tried. You give me effort. Julio Jones didn't have those same opportunities. At least the Broncos tried to get Demaryius the ball. But, if you win this game against the Patriots with 1 catch from Demaryius Thomas, you got to be feeling really good about yourselves there.
Definitely.
So, good luck getting that job back, Peyton Manning. We'll see here pretty soon. But
hang it up.
Yeah, exactly. That's a wrap right there. Bring in Cooper Manning. Now's the time. That'll wrap things up here for us for the Sunday recap. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got lots of other content for NFL, NBA, and everything else at dailyfantasycafe.com.